I'm Jim Justice. I'm the interim head of upper school. And over here we've got
Mark May Beaver, and I teach in the English department at Lovett, and I coordinate the American Studies program.
So I want to just say a little bit about how this all started. And there's both the facts and the story of our two schools. So facts are we're very similar. We're about 1,850 K through 12. Lovett's a rough 1,700 K through 12. We're literally 2 miles apart. And they are our arch rival. And we like to compete. We like to compete in the application process. We like to compete in the athletic realm. We like to compete in the academic realm. I think the only thing we agree on is neither of us like Blessed Trinity. So, probably the biggest event in our school communities is the fall football game. And that is frequently referred to as the Battle of Buckhead. It is occasionally referred to as the Silver Spoon Bowl. It is such an intense rivalry that from about the mid-'80s up until roughly 2000, we didn't actually play the football game because it got too ugly. Not so much amongst the kids, but amongst our parents. And I know y'all don't ever have problematic parents like that. So it was intense. So how did we come to sort of be arch rivals that began to collaborate? It really began as a brainchild of two great school heads, Billy Peoples and Bill Clarkson, who are really kind of in the wisdom years of their headships. I sort of think of headships in phases or evolutions or stages of development. You know, these guys had been heads at other schools. They had built buildings. They'd run their capital campaigns. They'd done all that. And so they were kind of in the wisdom stage of their headships, and they got together and said, well, what if we did something together, just out there in the city? And from there, it became a meeting of lots of administrators like me and Marcia Little at Lovett, who's in the room, and Laura Deisley, and ultimately the two teachers, Mark May Beaver and Bart Griffith. And of course, no offense to all of the administrators in the room, but the real magic actually happens with the two teachers working together and the teachers and the students. So this became a collaboration not of simply of two schools that were rivals, but a group of teachers and a group of students collaborating together, and ultimately teachers and students collaborating with other neighborhoods in the city of Atlanta. It began as a trying it once thing. I just love whenever we want to do something that could be kind of scary, we just call it a pilot, and everyone's like, oh, okay. But we knew sort of that we wanted to move from pilot phase to a sought-after program that was in pretty high demand at both schools, and that was going to do more than just that. It was going to make a difference in neighborhoods. It was going to transform curriculum and teaching within schools and sort of influence outward in all those sorts of ways. So I'm going to pass the little clicker device to Mark, and he's going to give you just a little more specifics about how it all works.
Okay, so I am Mark May Beaver, and I teach at Lovett during the regular school year, and I have the privilege of teaching this course, Atlanta 2.0, during the summer. My current co-teacher from Westminster is Sabrina Johnson, who any moment now is going to bring a baby into the world. So we thought that was a decent excuse for why she wouldn't be here this morning to join me. But I want to tell you a little bit about our curriculum and how we take these students from these two rival schools and create a real partnership for 3 weeks each June. From the very beginning, our theme for the course has been public space. We look at how public space can be used to build community throughout the city of Atlanta. And we've always viewed the course as having two parts or two sides of the same coin. The first part of the course is where we go all around the city of Atlanta, really take advantage of Atlanta as a classroom for us, a neutral space off the campuses of Lovett or Westminster. And we look at the different ways that public space is being used or reused for urban renewal throughout the city. And then in the second half of the class, we settle down in one particular neighborhood where we narrow our focus. We break kids into separate groups, and they do design projects where their task is to come up with a proposal for a specific space in that neighborhood that could serve as a way of renewing and reinvigorating that particular neighborhood. So to give you a sense of some of the things that we do in the first half of the class, of all the aspects of public space, we really focus a lot on public art and green space. Those two themes come up again and again for us in our study of public space. So what we have up here in the first two pictures is we are meeting with a street artist called Everyman. And for those of you who are not from Atlanta, Everyman creates Everymen. Everymen, we are featuring our Everymen in that center picture there. It's a little square that you cut from wood, and on the front side, we've got a stenciled image that represents the Everyman, and then on the back there are magnets. And what we do with the Everyman is we spread them throughout the city in public spaces, and if you come across an Everyman, you're encouraged to pick it up and move it elsewhere to some other public space. And in doing that, spread a little good cheer and some love throughout the community. It's a small token that actually pays big dividends in a lot of ways. The right-hand picture is we continue our study of public art by looking at art on the Beltline, which is a very, very big component. Later on, we look at other green spaces. If you're not from the city of Atlanta, you might not recognize these images, but on the left-hand side, this comes from the DuPont Commons neighborhood, which is the highest point in the city of Atlanta. Middle is Whittier Park on the west side. And then we made a trip over to the east side to meet with the East Lake Foundation, where we're studying green space there as well. Later in the first week and a half, or part one of the program, we make our way to the old Fourth Ward Park behind the current Ponce City Market and the old Sears building. And then the two images in the middle on the right and on the right, this is sort of a before and after image of the Atlanta Beltline. The Atlanta Beltline is an incredible educational opportunity for us. A lot of students, when they begin this course, they're not aware at all of Atlanta's biggest urban renewal project that we have ongoing. And if they are aware, they have no idea sort of what its current status is and what its vision for the future can be. So the left of those two images, we're on the West Side Trail, which is currently under construction, and just getting a sense of what can happen in that particular area. And then on the right side, that's the East Side Trail across town, which is currently considered the gem of the Beltline. It's the most successful stretch of that territory at present. And then as we move into the second half of the class, and especially in that third and final week, we begin our work on the design projects. This year we wanted to work very closely with the Beltline, so we met with Lee Harrop from Beltline Inc., who is the program director, and he suggested that we narrow our focus specifically to the Adair Park neighborhood, which is sort of in southwest Atlanta. And that was a great opportunity because there's a lot of exciting work currently being done with the Beltline in that neighborhood. So in the images on the left, we're meeting with Randy Gibbs, who is the neighborhood president of Adair Park. And then the middle and right-hand images, we're at Murphy's Triangle, which is connected to Adair Park. And we're specifically at the old State Farmers Market there, which heretofore in the last few years has been most well known for being a filming site for the Walking Dead TV show. But our kids had some other plans for what could be done with that space to perhaps reinvigorate the community to a large degree. And so these students begin work on this design project, and I just want to tell you about one particular project to give you a sense of the type of work they're doing. One group decided to call their project Green Seats Atlanta, and they broke their project into 3 different phases: a short-term, mid-term, and then long-term phase. Phase 1 this is a term that I wasn't familiar with when I started teaching this course 3 years ago: tactical urbanism. Tactical urbanism, as I understand it, is just a small, inexpensive, grassroots type plan that can draw attention to an existing problem and perhaps propose a more long-term solution for the future. And so as students were looking at some of the public spaces in Adair Park, in one of the particular green spaces, they saw this bench. And the bench wasn't being used. It wasn't a very pretty sight. And in particular, the foundations on the left and right of the bench were used as trash receptacles. So in order to sort of draw attention to what could happen with a bench like that in a public space, they created a prototype where fresh flowers would be planted in those current trash receptacles. And then as they decided for a phase 2 to scale up a little bit, They thought about in that park different places, strategic locations where the other benches could be placed, and began to sort of expand this idea. Finally, moving on to the last stage of it, a more long-term plan, we have more upscale benches and some other parks in the neighborhood where they could be placed. And they also organized a potential festival that could be held where members of the community could come and actually participate in painting the benches and that sort of thing in order to draw a lot of attention and create a lot of good feeling in that particular neighborhood. Atlanta 2.0 always concludes with a presentation of these proposals to a panel. And that panel consists of members of the Lovett and Westminster communities, of course, but probably more importantly, a lot of the people that we've met who work every day in urban renewal, we invite them back for these panel presentations to hear the presentations and offer feedback to the students. And often that's the best part of our course. The students have really invested so much time and energy into these projects, and to get some feedback, positive feedback usually, but in some cases some suggestions for improvement, that's always helpful to these students. So that's where we are with Atlanta 2.0 at this point, given the 3-week sort of parameters that we have for the course. At this point we can only propose ideas, but there's talk among the two schools of one or the other, or perhaps both, picking up some of these ideas during the school year and continuing with them, and perhaps bringing some of these ideas to fruition as the course goes on. Thank you.